I originally didn't mean to do this in the dark. It just, the room happened to be this way, and I decided to leave it like this. What happened to me, what she did to me. She lined us up one day in front of the kitchen on Lyons Road. And we were used to being lined up a bit because of the questions of who the better parent was. This time she lined us up and she asked us if our father had ever touched us. And she asked my brothers, and they said no, and she went right past them. She got to me and she asked if he ever touched me. And at first I tried to make a joke and say, oh yeah, of course everyone touches me, see here, and I touched her arm. And she said, no, has he ever touched me inappropriately, like down there? And I said, no, gosh, no. And she just stayed there, and she said, are you sure? And I said, no, he never did. And she kept asking, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? And I kept saying, no, he didn't. No. And then, are you sure turned into, was it this time or that time, or maybe this or maybe that? And I remember her saying, was it January, February? And she said February. And the word February seemed almost alien to me for a second. I forgot what the word February meant. And I got this picture of the ocean in my head. I still remember that. I forced myself to remember that part. I forced myself to remember everything because I knew that one day I was going to have to state my case. And I do remember that. And I repeated, I said, February? And she gleaned onto that and she got real excited. And she said it was February, and I said, no. You know, I told her I just forgot what it meant. And she wasn't listening at that point, and she was glaring daggers at my dad. And I kept trying to say no, and she stared me down. And I finally said, okay. And that was how it started. And my brothers were standing right there, and they saw it. My dad was standing right there, and he saw it. And despite them seeing that I tried to say no, I was attacked later on. My mom would come to me. First, my mom would come to me each morning, and she would ask me, oh, did your father do this or this or this last night? And she would never just ask, what did he do? She would have ready-made scenarios that she would ask. And I would just say, yeah, okay, because I didn't know what to do. I had no fucking power. My dad wasn't helping me. You know, my dad wasn't saying, honey, you don't have to do what she says. No, my dad was looking at me and he was getting angry at me. And my mom, if I didn't do what she told me to do, she would be angry at me. And so I didn't know what to do. And even as she was saying these things, it put ugly pictures in my head, because she would say, remember, think hard. And I would think, and it made me question myself and say, well, maybe he was coming in while I was sleeping. Maybe I didn't know. Maybe she knew something I didn't. And I was 7 years old. And then I remember one day my grandma coming over, because we were standing by the door, that door in the big room on Lyons Road, in the really big room in the back. And she called me a wicked little liar. She called me a little liar. And my mom stood behind me, standing up for me, supposedly, saying, oh, she knows what she's saying. And the truth is, my mom, and I said this in my other video, my mom was standing by her position. She was the one putting me in that position. And I didn't know what to do. I was scared. I was so fucking scared. And I felt so helpless. And on the one hand, I had my mom putting these ugly pictures in my head, making me feel dirty, and I felt so fucking dirty because of what she was doing. And then on the other hand, she had everyone else, my whole family, against me. And I was so fucking scared of all this. And I didn't know what to do. And, I thought, is this going to go to trial? Is something going to happen? And then one day, it just stops. People stop talking about it. Nobody says anything about it. And nobody tells me. And I don't say anything because I hated it in the first place. I didn't want to do it. And then they just stop and nobody says, hey, Michelle, we're sorry for doing that to you. No. And I'm wondering what she told everyone. I have this horrible sneaking suspicion she told everyone I made it up. They were there and saw her. They were there and they saw her feeding me that stuff. And I'd love to know what it was she told them behind my back, because nobody came to me and said anything. Nobody ever said sorry. And then later on, other things would happen to me. I really would get molested by an uncle, her brother-in-law, and when I was 9, and I would stay silent about it for a long time. And they would joke, oh, she has PMS, Michelle's got PMS. Nobody thought to ask me, Michelle, hey honey, is something actually wrong? No, they just joked about my silence and my being quiet and my being very solemn about things. 2 years later, when I finally did tell them, and I told my cousin first, I didn't tell them, I told my cousin because we were in a class where they were talking about sexual abuse, and I couldn't hold that in anymore, so I told my cousin. And she told me I needed to tell my parents, or else she told them herself, I can't remember which. But when my parents found out, there wasn't all this anger, there wasn't all this whatever. They just stood there, like they were thinking hard about something, but nothing was ever done. And the thing is, I've been trying to go see a counselor when I was a kid. I would want to go see a counselor for these things. And I wasn't allowed. It was not allowed. Because if I did, I'd get her kids taken away. Because there were other things that went on in that house. In any of the houses we lived, there were other things that went on. And I had to go for several years and feel like, first of all, I was bad anyway, because everybody blamed me when she was making me say those things about my dad. And then when it really did happen, I felt that I was being punished. I thought that I really was bad. And she never told me otherwise. And whenever I would try to go get help for myself, because this was my business, this happened to me, when I tried to go get help, I had a breakdown in school. And I tried to see a therapist. And I don't think I talked about the sexual thing. I didn't talk about any of this stuff. I just needed to talk to somebody. And when I did that, they attacked me. That is why I don't want anything to do with her anymore. There's even more to do with it. There's more things that she did. I mean, there's the narcissist thing of her. She would steal money from me. She would steal objects from me. She would take things from me, and she would tell me I owed her. She would want my social security number so she could put a bill in my name, because she wouldn't pay it on her own. And everyone else does know that. Everyone else knows my mom didn't pay bills because she went out and she pissed her money away. But I existed to her only to get things, and then when something happened to me, it didn't matter. I existed to her for her to use against my dad. And then I existed for her to get money. And then when I tried to tell anybody about the things that happened, I was called crazy. That woman, what she did to me, is unforgivable. I was scared to talk about things for so long. And now I can't. You know what she fucking deserves for me to tell all this. I'm not crazy. She deserves. God, I can't get into what she deserves. Everything happened, and there are others who can confirm some of these things. It came to this. It came to this. She's heartless. She claims that she loves me. She claims that she loves all her kids. No, she's a narcissist, and she thinks that her children exist to do things for her, to give things to her, to act as a tool against, my dad when he was still alive. She's a monster. She's